My name is Jo Bolingbroke. I'm 23 years old and born August 11, 1992. I'm an open gay man and I've autism.
I'm Natasha and I identify as bisexual, and I'm not entirely sure of my gender identity yet. I will be soon.
My name's Colin. Sometimes I describe myself as just a queer being, just generally. But then again, it's sort of like I'm a bit fluid and a bit mostly transmasculine, and I don't really know. And as for sexuality, like I'm sort of vaguely attracted to like men, but also like non-binary people are like a fun time, but also like I think I'm on the asexual and or aromantic spectrum.
I'm Danny. My sexual orientation is lesbian, maybe. Yeah, I'm still a little bit unsure, but right now I identify as a lesbian, but I guess I find sexuality very fluid. Yes, I can get into that later if you want. And I identify as she. Being part of a different community from everyone else, you know, although it's very inclusive, it's sort of our little bubble where we can be free to be who you are and however you want to be. And I guess it's very important to me, being LGBT. It's always something I never feel comfortable meeting someone new unless they know, because it's a huge part of my life. And yeah, I always feel like I can't be myself unless people know this about me. So being LGBT is a huge part of my life and my identity.
I guess it's just being yourself, still being a person.
Being LGBT to me means everything. Like almost all of my friends are LGBT, and like things like All Sorts is like my favourite place in the whole world. So it's like I don't know, it's like a sense of myself, but also of all of the people around me, and how like it makes me feel part of something.
It's just part of me, really. It's part of life. I can't imagine not being that way. Like part of the community, but it has restrictions and it has good points as well.
So I felt like I always felt like I was LGBT before I was labelling myself even, and it felt like just one of those things. It's like, yeah, I'm probably just LGBT. And now it's like this massive breakthrough, and it's the most spectacular thing, and it just
being treated differently, definitely, because I've had friends that I was friends with when I was straight, but it was like when I came out, those friends started to disappear because they didn't accept my sexuality. But it did show me that they're not my true friends, because your real friends love and support you and accept for you.
I like walking down the street holding hands with my girlfriend and really shy of stuff. Being in a club and getting that causing unwanted attention and abuse. But that is the only difficulty I found, is homophobia from strangers in public areas.
I'd say I'm probably one of the like luckiest trans people ever. Like I've experienced like 2 people ever being transphobic in my life, and I like it's still a pain in the ass sometimes, and it's still like awful, but it feels like I am ridiculously lucky in that I haven't had like other people causing me difficulties, and I don't get dysphoric very easily, and like I still have issues. Like I'm out at school, and that's really brilliant, and everyone calls me by my preferred name and pronouns and stuff, and like I run the LGBT group and things, but then at the same time it's stuff like I have to use the disabled toilets, which is like, I'm not disabled, so I shouldn't be having to use those, and like I get incredibly embarrassed about it.
Being autistic and growing up in an autistic school where LGBT things were just shunned and just like not looked upon, more looked upon. It was just a phase sort of thing, and not really anything, not really spoken about. But it was difficult because I knew I had these feelings. I was attracted to guys, but whenever I wanted to talk about it, it was like, oh, it's just a phase. You'll grow out of it, that sort of thing. It was like I felt that wasn't right, and I felt just because it's an autistic school, things like that should be talked about.
Yeah, I grew up in a school, like a secondary school, that was very restrictive. There was not a lot of education around LGBT issues.
I was very lucky. My coming out story is very positive, because my mum actually is married to a woman. So telling mum, she told me that she had a girlfriend when I was about 17, 18, so I was just getting ready to starting to think, oh, I might have to tell someone that I like girls soon. And then my mum goes, by the way, Danny, my friend Debbie and I, we're actually dating now.
Wow.
And I was like, Mum just stole my thunder. I was gonna come out, but yeah, so then when I finally did tell her, I knew I didn't have to worry.
I just remember I was very young when I realised I was about 6 or 7. I sort of realised I felt a bit different about things, and I didn't tell anyone till I was 18.
Wow.
So that was over 10 years to think about it a lot. So that was very hard in some ways, but yeah.
I remember telling my dad, it was terrifying. Because, you know, some family members had made horrible comments about the gay community, and I didn't know how he was going to take it. And I was shaking and crying, and just so I worked it up in my head to be so much worse than it was. When I finally spit it out, he was like, God, what is your problem? You know, like, I'm just happy you're not with that other guy you were dating anymore. I was like, thanks, Dad.
Definitely more education for younger people. Obviously, as I said, I wasn't given any, and I don't think the school that I went to actually does anymore. So I think it's covered very briefly. So more education, more services as well would be, I think, especially for younger people. There's not a lot for very young people. Because obviously I realised when I was very young, I think having a place for younger people to go to would be extremely useful.
I think the biggest change for me is breaking down stereotypes. I often get from even people within the LGBT community, like, oh, you don't look gay, like, and sort of question my preferences because of the way I look. And I think you shouldn't be so presumptuous based on that, because some people should learn to stop judging people just by the way they look.
Well, I definitely would like to see more LGBT issues being talked about in autistic and special needs schools, because I feel it's important to have that, because I didn't really get any support for my sexuality until I went to college, where I was told about all sorts of youth projects, where I am now today, and been coming for the last 3-4 years. And they taught me that there's nothing to be ashamed of, that I need to love and accept myself for who I am, and there's nothing wrong with being gay.
I think there's so many things. I think we need education. I think everyone needs to be educated on everything, and then to just sort of let everything else happen naturally, and for it to then be like, look, this is what it's like to be LGBT, blah blah blah, and then gradually, like education to people that don't class themselves as LGBT leads to more acceptance for LGBT people, but also more people realising that they are LGBT. And I think we just need to educate, and then everything else should sort of happen organically. As long as everyone's accepting of it, then it should be, I think it would be sort of okay from there, I reckon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It feels like the 4 most wonderful letters